Now I'd like to get now down to the Senate race. As we said, we're looking to get rid of Gillibrand. There's a couple of people up there that want that position. There's going to be a primary coming up. And I would like to have one of those candidates come up right now. Wendy Long threw her hat in the ring a couple of months back. She's got a lot of support around the state. I'd like to have her come up, say a couple of words and answer some questions.
Thank you, Steve, and thank you all for being here. It's really an inspiration to me to be in a room full of people like this. We've been fighting, as long as I have, and in some cases longer, for the things we believe in, most of which are contained in this, the United States Constitution. Very concise, fits in my pocket. A lot shorter than the Obamacare bill and the Dodd-Frank bill and the federal budget. That's what this country was supposed to be about. Laws are supposed to be short, digestible, understandable statements of right and wrong by which people can govern themselves. They can't govern themselves by what Washington is putting out right now.
Wendy, hold that right here closer.
Oh, I'm sorry. You can't hear me. Let me back up for a minute. And first of all, thank you for being here. You all are voting with your feet by being here tonight, and so am I. You all could be doing anything tonight. Watching TV, catching up on some rest. Spending time with kids, grandkids. Maybe working if you can find a job in this Obama-Gillibrand economy. But you're here, and you're here because you care about something that's more important than any of us, something that hopefully will endure longer than we will. The United States of America and its Constitution and our system of self-government. Let me tell you a little bit about me, how I got to be here. I've had the privilege of meeting a few of you along the way on the campaign trail, but most of you I have not met yet. So I think my campaign manager, Rob Ryan, who's in the back, gave out a little bit of literature. I don't know if we had enough for everybody. But if we didn't, and if you're interested in learning more, my campaign website is www.wendylong4newyork, all spelled out, .com. And there's information there, information about how to contact us. And we'd love to hear more from you if you'd like, at any point during the campaign, but certainly before the June 26th primary, if there's further information you need. How did I get to be here? I grew up in New Hampshire, a state whose motto is live free or die. And that was my motto since I was a little kid. I grew up there and stayed there for college. And I was lucky enough to be in college during the Reagan years, when a lot of people kind of go astray politically in the liberal academic environment. Ronald Reagan was president. And that's when I got my political formation, from him. And was inspired after college to go to Washington because I loved our country, loved the Constitution. And I worked for two great United States senators who were part of the Reagan Revolution, great Republican conservatives who were voluntary citizen legislators before citizen legislature was cool. They term limited themselves. They served 2 terms. They both had private lives, one in New Hampshire, one in Colorado, and then they went back to those lives because they regarded that kind of service as the model of what our founders intended for self-government. So that example that they set stuck with me. And when they retired, I went on to go to law school to learn a little bit more about this document that I cared about so much. And then I had a great opportunity to serve as a law clerk, as a young lawyer, here in New York on the Federal Circuit Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit for Judge Ralph Winter, who was one of Ronald Reagan's very first appointees to the federal bench. And then I served at the United States Supreme Court as law clerk to Justice Clarence Thomas. Nice. Who I believe is the one justice, and I think from the response, there are a lot of people in this room who agree with me, the one justice who gets this document right. When some of the others come close, they come close, they may vote the right way, but if you read his opinions, he's the one who's got it right, who knows what the Commerce Clause really means, what the Second Amendment really means, what the First Amendment really means. So it was an incredible privilege to serve with him for a year and learn about the United States Constitution. And what I learned a lot during that time is that the courts have gotten a couple things wrong about the Constitution. One, the stuff that's clearly in here, in black and white, in plain English, they just ignore. They don't uphold it, they don't enforce it. Like that we have an individual right to bear arms. It's pretty simple. Or the right to practice our religion freely. Those things are very clear, or that the fact that Congress only has certain limited enumerated powers in Article 1. Those are the only things Congress can do. If it's not clearly spelled out there, Congress can't do it. Those things are very clear, and the courts have ignored those. Then there's another thing that the courts do. The stuff that isn't in here at all, they just make it up that it is. Things like, a right to an abortion. And I'm sure it's coming down the pike, a right to same-sex marriage. These things aren't in here at all. And when things aren't in here at all, it's left up to the people to decide what they want to do about those issues. So I was very concerned about that. And after I was in private practice as a lawyer here in New York, I decided to go off and start a nonprofit organization with some friends, which would help confirm justices to the United States Supreme Court who believe in judicial restraint, who believe in the kind of things I was just talking about. So I worked very hard and worked with the Bush White House on the confirmations of Chief Justice John Roberts and Justice Sam Alito to the Supreme Court. So we're making a little bit of progress there, but the Supreme Court is still in kind of a 5-4 balance that frequently goes the wrong way on many, many, many important constitutional issues. I knew that if Barack Obama was elected in 2008, that would only get worse. And so I spent most of 2008 campaigning around the country against Barack Obama on the issue of the court and the Constitution and what a Obama presidency, the damage that it would do to the Constitution and to the Supreme Court. And unfortunately, we lost that battle in 2008. But I would like to say that we certainly were very prescient because everything that we predicted about what he would do to the court has come true with his appointments of Elena Kagan and Sonia Sotomayor. So this brings me forward to 2012. After seeing what has happened under 4 years of Barack Obama, the continued erosion of this document, the erosion of our freedoms, the erosion of self-government, and I think coming precipitously close to losing what our founders did and created for us 225 years ago when they sat down in Philadelphia. And they wrote this simple document based upon the freedoms in the Declaration of Independence. This is supposed to preserve life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, also known as property. The pursuit of happiness is longhand or shorthand for property. When they set that out, it was a grand experiment. It was the first written constitution in the history of the world. It was an experiment in self-government. They called it the New Order of the Ages. And under this grew the greatest country in the history of the world with unequaled freedom, prosperity that had been unknown before this country. But I think we're really now at a turning point in 2012. We are on the verge of possibly losing this experiment. We are at the close tipping point of when more people are going to be demanding and expecting and wanting something from our federal government than are paying in federal income taxes. And once we get past that tipping point, I think self-government and the Constitution are going to be in even more peril than they're in now. We have $16 trillion in debt almost. I'm sure you all know that. A good chunk of it payable to China. The IMF has said that by 2016, China's economy will eclipse the United States, and we will no longer be the economic leader of the world. I think that there's a moral crisis and a political crisis accompanying that economic crisis. I think they're all intertwined. I don't think we have just a numbers problem. We have a numbers problem, to be sure, in our federal overtaxing, overspending, our deficits, and our debt. But the reason we have that is the failure to follow this document. Every single problem we have, whether it's the debt and the deficits, whether it's Obamacare and Dodd-Frank and these laws I was referring to in my introduction, these oppressive regulations that are crushing the human spirit, crushing free enterprise, and crushing American families, are all a result of a failure to follow this Constitution. So that's the theme of why I'm running. I took a look at Kirsten Gillibrand. She is probably, I would say, the #1 cheerleader for the Barack Obama failed administration policies. She has no independence that I can see. She pretty much rubber stamps what he does or what Chuck Schumer does. And to some extent, I think it's true that National Journal recently ranked her as the #1 most liberal senator in the entire U.S. Senate. I think there's a lot of competition for that position, but I think they're right. And the reason why she came there is she even voted for things that Chuck Schumer didn't vote for, such as federal funding for ACORN. So she has gone so far to the left. I think she's way out on the end of a branch. And I said, you know what, somebody needs to come along and saw that branch off. And she's always saying, and everything she's doing seems to be geared toward getting more women involved in politics. She talks about this all the time. So I said, you know what? Why don't we just give her what she's asking for? And that's why I'm here. I'm a mother of young children. I'm very concerned that our country isn't going to survive for them. As I go around and talk to mothers around the state of New York, I was sitting at a table with some mothers last week, and the tears actually started to come down their eyes when I said, you know, it seems to me that the greatest export that New York has right now is its kids. I hear these stories of children, families who've had roots here, kids have been educated here, some of them in our state university system, and they come out and there are no jobs to be had. And it's not just about unemployment, the incredibly high unemployment of those under 25 years old with bachelor's degrees, 53% are unemployed or underemployed. These kids are having to leave, it's breaking up families, and so it's not just an issue of employment, it's an issue of the whole fabric of our society. So I began to think about that and I said, you know, I'm concerned about the future of my kids, I'm concerned about this document, that's why I'm in this race. I've never run for public office before. I got in at the end of February, and I'm very happy to say that at the Republican State Convention in March, I was able to collect 48% of the vote, a very large plurality. My two opponents, George Maragos and Bob Turner, got 25 and 27% respectively, so I did very well there. I also have the Good Housekeeping seal of approval in that I am already the nominee of the Conservative Party of New York. So I am already on the November ballot against Kirsten Gillibrand. So the fight right now is for the June 26th Republican nomination. I know my opponents, Bob Turner and George Maragos, may have come to speak with you. They're good men. I think that we share a lot of the same positions. But I believe that I can take the fight to Kirsten Gillibrand in a way that they can't. She and I have very similar biographies. We share a lot in common. We're lawyers. We're mothers of young children. But the comparison ends there. On every single issue and every single principle, we have a sharp disagreement. And I think that's what elections are all about, is giving the people a choice, and a clear choice about what is at stake for this country. And I think in 2012, absolutely everything is at stake. The solvency of our federal government, the survival of free enterprise, our ability to practice our faith freely, and the very character of our nation and the security of our country. Everything is on the line in 2012. So I think I can take that fight to her by virtue of my experience, my learning of the Constitution, my experience in the courts, in the Senate, working with the White House. I've been a mother and I've been a private citizen, but I know my way around Washington. So I would be so honored if I could take that fight to Kirsten Gillibrand on behalf of everybody in this room who I know is fighting for the same principles and same things that I am. I would just also like to share, I'm so happy to be in this American Legion Hall as we enter Memorial Day weekend. And I was thinking as we drove in here about the American Legion, and I have my little copy that the American Legion Auxiliary gives out. And I'm reminded of the poem In Flanders Field, because I feel like there's something in that poem from those who've died and shed their blood in so many wars, the American Revolution, on the fields of Saratoga and Gettysburg, over to Normandy, and even those who died in Afghanistan and Iraq. I want to listen to their voices because I think they're saying something to us. They're asking us to fight for the things that they died for. And they didn't die for what Kirsten Gillibrand is saying, for the right to force religious employers to pay for their employees' contraception. They didn't give their lives for that. They didn't give their lives so that we could run up $16 trillion in debt and hand the credit card to our kids. They didn't die for that. They didn't die for Obamacare or Dodd-Frank or any of those things. They died for this. They died for freedom and prosperity and our ability to to run our families and our businesses the way that we see fit. So I'm going to just say this poem for you. This is the last thing I'm going to do. It's In Flanders Field, and it's the message to us. In Flanders Field, the poppies blow between the crosses, row on row, that mark our place, and in the sky the lark still bravely singing flies, scarce heard amid the guns below. We are the dead. Short days ago we lived, felt dawn, saw sunset glow, loved and were loved, and now we lie in Flanders Field. Take up our quarrel with the foe. To you from failing hands we throw the torch, be yours to hold it high. If ye break faith with us who die, we shall not sleep, though poppies grow in Flanders Field. God bless America, and thank you.
Answer a couple of questions for a few minutes, right?
You are sent to the Senate. You will most likely be asked to ratify the UN Treaty of the Sea and the International Small Arms Treaty. What would you do with that when it comes up before you?
The first thing I do is read them. I would not, as Nancy Pelosi does, say, let's just vote on and read it later. I haven't read those two treaties, so I would need to read them. I don't know if there are any particular concerns about them, but with many treaties, the problem is that senators just don't read them. They look at what their leadership tells them to do, and then they vote a certain way.
Well, let me amend it a little bit. Both of those basically surrender U.S. sovereignty to the United Nations a little bit at a time. One on the Second Amendment infringement, which would probably undermine and do away with the Second Amendment. The other one would take away from us the actual right to do anything off our shores, drill for oil, or anything else that we want to do without getting the permission of a group of unelected people somewhere in Europe. If you're asked to deal with those two issues as to whether or not you want to ratify them, where do you stand?
Well, without commenting I can't take a position on a document I haven't read, but I will say this. One of the prime obligations of a U.S. Senator is to defend the sovereignty of the United States, not to cede that sovereignty to any international body or to international or foreign law. So, in principle, what we're discussing here is that no, I would never, in a treaty, I would never vote for a treaty that cedes any of our sovereignty to an international body in that way. Yes?
We've all heard about George Bush's administration, senior, junior, the Clinton administration, the Carter administration, this whole term called One World Order. And it's been documented, it's on film and everything else. They've all made statements around that. And now we're hearing about the United Nations is going to supersede our U.S. Constitution. So I'd like you to speak to that.
Well, it's a little bit of the issue we were just discussing about the United States ceding either its sovereign power or legal authority to anything beyond what this Constitution specifies where power resides. And that is among the institutions of government that are accountable to the people. So I certainly disagree in principle, and I think it's one of the problems that we have now with our current elected officials and our Supreme Court, frankly, in acting like the limits of this document don't apply when we cede that power to foreign bodies. So, it's the same principle, and I certainly think it's incorrect.
What would be your main points of attack against children?
I think the main points of attack to run a successful campaign must be the things that concern people the most urgent issues on the federal level. And those are the economy and jobs and debt and deficits and federal spending and taxes. I mean, they're all kind of connected. Just the unemployment situation is a result of our bad economy. Our bad economy is a result of overtaxing, overspending, debt, and deficit. And over-regulating, absolutely. I'm sorry I left that one out. Absolutely. That's the case with Obamacare, it's the case with Dodd-Frank, it's the case with EPA and agriculture regulations. Absolutely. There's just, Washington, we've heard this before, so it sounds trite, but Washington is way too big. It's gotten completely out of control. If you go there now, it looks very different from when I went there 25 years ago as a young kid out of college. There are high-rises everywhere, full of bureaucrats and lobbyists. The city's choking, and that's what it's become. It's now the Washington metropolitan area, according to the last census, now has the highest per capita income of any metropolitan area in the country. And there's a reason for that. Right. And that needs to end. We've been hearing it for some time, but now it's reaching very dire proportions and it's getting to the end of the road. And we really have to stop it. We have to reverse it. We have to slash the size of Washington and the scope of Washington once and for all. Yes, ma'am.
As a woman, I see you uniquely positioned in being able to go head-to-head with Kirsten only because men would be more subject to having to toe some more political correctness than perhaps a woman-on-woman kind of a contest might be. How vicious are you prepared to be? Thank you. Because you know, I don't support you when they call you the B word and any other alphabetical word. Well, I think you'll be strongly vicious towards new ideas.
Well, should I do Bill Maher's show? You know, I've done some of these shows before. I mean, that's one thing I have done that neither of my opponents have done. I mean, I've tangled with the likes of Chris Matthews and all these kind of liberal talk show hosts. I've been on their shows before, so it's something I've done. You know, I've had all these silly things written about me in the New York Times already, so I've gotten my feet wet. I sort of know what that's like. And whenever somebody comes making these arguments, I just picture in my mind, you know, my kids. And I think I'm doing it for them. And I don't know if you know this poem, but there's a poem by Rudyard Kipling. It's very politically incorrect. It's called "The Female of the Species is Deadlier Than the Male." So you got to go read it if you haven't read it. It's a great poem. And I think that, you know, it's true. There's something in female nature that can be very, very ferocious. And especially when we're younger.
Like a man.
When you're campaigning, when you're dating her, point out when she was first proposed, I thought, oh, conservative Democrat, pro-Second Amendment. That's when she was upstate. Once she came from Kansas, all of a sudden, of course,
You're exactly right. I don't know if everybody could hear the question, but it was about flip-flopping. And you're absolutely right. I mean, Senator Gillibrand,
She's
when
evolved.
she was evolved. That's what happens. You know, that's good. Good command of the English language is she devolved. But no, you're absolutely right. She said, as an upstate congresswoman, that she kept her guns under her bed, which is, by the way, anyone who actually has guns knows that's not where you keep them when you're young children. We never do that, but anyway, and we couldn't even bring our guns into Manhattan. When I moved to Manhattan, I was very surprised. My husband, who'd grown up in Manhattan, said, oh no, you can't bring your guns here. I mean, if you're the publisher of the New York Times, of course, then you can do it. But just ordinary citizens like we have to keep our guns in Rockland County. We can't. Yes, sir. I am in favor of term limits. I would self-term limit. Even if they're not legislated. Like I said, I believe they're key to a citizen legislature. That's what the founders intended. The two men that I worked for in the Senate served 2 terms, and they would have easily won a 3rd term. They were very popular, and they said, that's it. That's what this is supposed to be about, and that's what they did, and I was trying to follow their model.
As a congress, holding the Constitution and trying to figure out a way we can protect ourselves from active judicial judges, ideological, like a popular. It's very difficult, you know, to protect yourself from. You know, like we're waiting on the Supreme Court ruling now, and they could just take that Constitution and so it might just throw it away. So we say it's it. And how does society protect itself? So that's a very deep question and something that has to be pondered down the line. But there's one, as far as the economy goes, there is one way we should be able to protect ourselves, which is a very big debate 6 months ago. It's going to start up again now, the debt ceiling. Now, what would you, if it was going to happen about another month or so, we have to vote on this.
Right.
Now that's a level, that is a maximum of law. But it seems, just like an active judiciary, we takes the time, well, that doesn't matter, we can just, we believe this, we'll do it this way. And the politicians do it, and it seems to be bipartisan. How would you stand? If somebody put it in front of you, will you raise the debt ceiling?
No. The question is, would I raise the debt ceiling? The answer is no. We've got to stop this. We've got to stop it once and for all. And obviously, if we don't raise it and people don't make specific cuts, then we have these automatic cuts that happen. That's silly. That's abdicating responsibility. We are paying the salary of these legislators. They're supposed to produce budgets, make decisions, vote on things, not just sit there. And the other thing that the Obama administration does, and people in Congress, is create these commissions. These commissions that aren't specified anywhere here as the organs of representative government. And then we blame these commissions. Oh, they set the policy. They set the government. It was this blue ribbon commission who did it. It wasn't us. Right, no, I mean, it's been both Republicans and Democrats who've done it, but that's one of the problems, so no, I would not
If you're
vote.
fortunate enough to get rid of Ms. Gillibrand, you get sworn in January, you know that issue will arise again.
Sure.
Yeah, so we got time record.
That's right.
You're gonna say no.
I will not vote, and more than that, I would propose what the cuts should be so that we stay down below that spending limit and start to dial the spending back down. And you know, I agree with Ronald Reagan. We don't have debt and deficits. The answer would not be raising taxes either, by the way. We don't have debt and deficits because the American people are undertaxed. We have debt and deficits because the government spends too much. It's pretty simple. Yes, ma'am, wait a minute.
Our Second Amendment, our First Amendment is under great attack. What is your feeling about the Catholic Church suing the federal government? And, you know, right now Washington is attacking our freedom of speech, freedom of religion. I just want your opinion on it.
I think it's fantastic that the Catholic Church is suing. I certainly hope and I believe that they will be victorious. I'm sorry that it's taken the church institutionally this long to wake up to the fact that, guess what? Their freedom of religion was under attack. The federal government has absolutely no right, morally or constitutionally, to tell any citizen or any church that they have to take actions that violate their faith or their conscience. There's no basis for it whatsoever, and I hope that's going to be the outcome of this suit.
If you listen to the women speaking, this is what women are concerned about.
That's right.
Right.
Not free contraception.
All right, we're out of time. Last question, folks, okay?
Oh, no. Oh, no.
All too often, we have seen where there's a good candidate with a lot of potential that gets reined in by their campaign manager. So this is a question, who's your campaign manager? This is a question more to Wendy's campaign manager. We've seen it in the McCain campaign where Palin was not allowed to, and women have very good instincts, okay? You know, she should have been able to go on the attack, all facts against Barack Obama, but that was not allowed to happen, and I think that was a key point as to why we lost. We see it with Mitt Romney's campaign. Already they're coming out and playing nice and saying that there are certain paths that we cannot go down, even though those paths are legitimate and factual. She seems like a very smart, sharp, on-the-ball woman. My question for you, sir, if her instincts tell her that she needs to go on the attack, will she be reined in?
He wants to know how vicious are you going to
Can I tell you something? I learned a long time ago, you never tell a woman what to do. Okay? That said, I think she is I've worked for a lot of people over the years. I started off working for Senator Jim Buckley when he was senator in the 70s. I was George Pataki's campaign manager in '94. This is an exceptional candidate here, and I'm not saying that because I'm working for her. I'm saying that because that's the truth. She has great political instincts. She's going to be great debating Gillibrand. She's going to be great debating her Republican opponents. And I think of the three of them, she's the only one who can do it. That's why I'm working for her. You know, I try not to work for someone who's going to lose, okay?
Just if I might offer a humble suggestion. Part of the problem is that we allow liberals to control the language. And when you control the language, you control the debate. And to use gay marriage, and I don't even like using that term, okay, as an example, okay, and it's very easy to lose sight of the fact that you're accepting a particular premise, okay? Now, the issue should not be, or the debate should not be, whether we do or do not support gay marriage, because that backs us into a corner that it's difficult for us to climb out of, okay? So I would just suggest to you, because I don't think anybody in this room would object to equal rights that two people of the same sex have a committed relationship okay? I don't think anybody would object to them having equal rights, whatever. Okay, but most of us object to the redefinition of the word marriage. So I would just like, if you do end up being successful, to keep in the back of your mind, anytime you're approached by a colleague, whether you support a particular phrase, just be mindful of the phrase that you're being asked to make a decision on and correct them. Hold the mirror up and choose your own language to define the issue.
That's a very good point, and if when I made the reference to same-sex marriage earlier, implied something to the contrary, I didn't mean to. I was just simply saying, I predict this is coming down the pike of something, a right that will be invented, it's not in the Constitution, by the Supreme Court. But what I was saying is, the Constitution says nothing about marriage. That means that states can define it however they want to, and however they want to is ultimately supposed to be responsive to the people in that state. So that's what I meant to describe, was more the court inventing something that wasn't in the Constitution.
Don't allow them to control the language.
Steve, why don't you get Judy in?
Excuse me, I'm asking a question. Sorry. He knows not to mess
Don't
with
mess with the women.
You're a lucky lady. You're going to get to have to sit next to the jerk, Mr. Schumer?
Schmucky.
Chuck the Schmuck, okay? Technically, your vote in New York, you will nullify him, which I will bow gracefully to you every day.
Yes, yes.
That being said, there's a lot of stuff. You've hit a lot of things. There's a couple of issues that I know everyone in this room worries about. NDAA, the concept of, I don't like what you said. That's it. You are a terrorist. I'm arresting you. You're gone. You're off the face of the earth. No due process. Taken away from that. Concept of the internet, the SOPA, PIPA, and all the other different names. I've got more abbreviations than I've got freckles, but all of them mean the same thing. Removal of rights. Constant removal of rights. You already said about the debt ceiling. This is something that everybody's freaked out about. Stuff of that nature. I know your vote, I personally have an idea what your answer is going to be, but you're going to be up against...
Chuck the Schmuck.
I'm trying to be nice, this is on tape, but the point that I'm making is, you know that you're not going to really have a lot of power there. Will you be willing to open your mouth and make sure you let them know as loudly as you can, being from New Hampshire, and I know many people from up there, live free and die is a wonderful motto. And will you be willing to stand up and scream as a woman fighting for her children, because every one of us are rabid dogs here about that. That's why we're here. That's the reason we're here. Are you prepared to deal with that jerk, his arrogance, his pompous kinglyhood, and put him down?
Well, the arrogance extends far beyond Chuck Schumer. I mean,
well, he's going to be your quote-unquote alternate.
But the
I'm sorry to say
yes,
that.
Of course, that's why I'm doing this. I want to stand up to this self-entitled, arrogant elite who thinks they know better than the rest of us how to run our families and our businesses and our lives and our property and our faith. That's absolutely what I'm doing this for. There's no other reason for doing it. So not only would I try to exercise my votes consistent with this document and consistent with the principles that are underneath it, but I would certainly want to explain why and make it something bigger than the vote itself and talk to people and educate them about what we're trying to accomplish.
That's a good thing to hear. Thank you. Thank you very much.